cut out. I had to cut out all that earlier part right there. Let me make sure I look straight right here. All right. Let me turn down this light. Thank goodness for editing later. All right. Welcome to the Is That So show. All right. We have a great show today. We have my brother, my brethren, Paul Bosworth. He getting up on the stage today, and he's going to talk to us about something very serious. That's something that many people are afflicted with, but yet very few are aware of. Not only aware that they have it, but also what to do whenever they learn of these symptoms of this condition. And to introduce that, I would like to talk about real quick my own some of you who have been following me know that I have a diagnosis of PTSD, and really, I would self-diagnose myself, which you should never do, as complex PTSD, that form of it. But PTSD, and when I was experiencing the symptoms of it far before I became aware of what I was experiencing. And I won't go into the details as to what events occurred that really brought on the onset, because we have far too much great information that my brethren is going to share with us, regarding his story. But I'll say that awareness is key. I am a mental health professional. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I am a certified mental health integrated medicine provider. I function as also a heart-centered hypnotherapist, certified clinical trauma professional. And yet, with all of these certifications that I have, I was unable to see right what was right in front of my very eyes. The fact that I was suffering. You see, many of us, especially those of us who are helpers, we have no problem sacrificing our life, our energy, our time, basically our bodies, so that we can continue to do this great work that we are called to do. But unfortunately, those who are helpers typically are the worst at helping themselves. And so it took the physical symptoms to set in before I was able to go to a doctor. And I went to a medical doctor, not a therapist. I went to a medical doctor. And thank goodness my medical doctor had a mental health background as well, very well versed. And I love that man to death. He retired in June. Dr. Brandt, thank you so much. You saved my life. But it was him who was able to see what I could not. Again, even though I'm well versed in mental health and I'm able to easily diagnose what's going on in other people, easily see the symptomology of the presenting issues present in other people, I myself was too close to the sun to understand what I was going through. I was far too close to the sun. It took my loved ones, because those are the ones who suffer the most whenever we are unaware. I was going to say caught unaware, but that moment did catch me unaware. But it's more of just a general unawareness that I was suffering from, and it was my loved ones who were harmed the most during this period of unawareness. And then once I had someone finally take the time to understand everything that was going on with me, that man talked to me for an hour and a half. This one provider pulled me back before any of the cashiers even showed up for their job. First thing in the morning, talked to me for an hour and a half. I thought the man didn't have any other patients. He made me feel as if I was the one and only patient he has ever had. And he took the time to say, no, this is what's going on. We're gonna run some tests, but I really think that you need some time off, and you have to get your mental wellness together, because you were running around here being Superman, but who's there to save Superman when he needs help? And that was the one question that just stayed with me. And he also guided me to the book, Wherever You Go, There You Are. And I just love the wisdom that he shared with me in that room. But I won't stop the broadcast any further from welcoming this giant on the stage. So without further ado, I would like to introduce and welcome upon the stage my brethren, Paul Bosworth.
Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for having me.
What's going on, brethren? How you doing, man?
I am doing what's right in front of me. Sometimes it's the phone, sometimes it's a call through instant messenger, but it's hey, I don't understand. Help me understand what this is. So thanks for having me. This is a great topic. It's going to be big. Just warning you now, this is something that's hiding in plain sight.
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's real important. I'm a survivor of a concussion. Yeah, no big deal, right? Big deal. It ended up being a very big deal. I'll tell you about it when you're ready.
And, and so, real quick, tell us your personal mission, your brand, what it is that you are passionate about before we get into your personal story.
So you would call me an inspirational speaker, and as I do my speeches, you'll find yourself going through a checklist as to how you fit in. I've done over 3, 4 dozen, close to 50 presentations in front of various groups from 5 to 448. And every time I do a talk about concussion awareness, we'll put that under the umbrella of concussion awareness. They have one person with tears streaming down their face saying, "You just spoke to me. I need to talk to you." And I'll shake everybody's hand. I'll thank everybody after I do my talk, complete with PowerPoint slides because I came from the corporate world. But whew, it's that person, it's that one person that I show up for. And hopefully today it'll be one person that they can hear what I'm saying and it resonates with them. I'm not asking for diagnoses. I'm not. I'm just asking for awareness to look for the diagnoses like you just described.
I don't know why I felt the need to button up my top collar. I felt a little bit more.
I'm kind of a lot. So you need to snap up.
Hey, you know what I'm saying? Get ready. Hey, it's business time. It's business time with old Paul. Yeah, and I didn't even realize, but I actually clicked a link. I was displaying something. I was teaching actually my father about StreamYard, and I clicked the link that he had accidentally that I put up there. It was the Apostle Paul, and I was like,
Okay,
huh, that actually fits.
he's cool.
That actually fits. That actually fits. So look, brethren, real quick, before one more question before we get into your story, and that is, what is concussion awareness?
It's the realization that once somebody is in a car accident, they've fallen in the playground, they've inadvertently got whacked in the head with a door. Somebody's going in at the same time you're going out, or you've fallen for whatever reason and you seem fine, you've shaked off everybody else, but months later you have migraines for the first time ever, or speech aphasia. That's a 50-cent word you owe me. And it's basically you can't talk for like 30 seconds and everybody laughs and we move on. Sometimes it comes back. I was talking to a survivor about 2 weeks ago, and she talks in a Scottish accent. She is from South Louisiana. And she's like, went to the doctor, and the doctor said, no brain bleed, no stroke. And she turned around and off she went. And she's talking to me about my story and about concussion awareness. And she said, hold on a minute. You can have all these things that I'm dealing with just by a concussion. Yeah, I did. And we're blowing past that. And usually it's because of embarrassment or ashamed, because you're supposed to show the wound. You're supposed to be able to show the wound. And with concussion, it's all in your head, literally. And the diagnosis, I can go into it, but yeah, that's concussion awareness in 2 minutes, is having the awareness to ask the questions. Can we try a concussion test? By the way, I'm 14 years into it, and I can't finish a concussion test without either throwing up or taking out the person that's holding me up. True story. But I look fine. And
Okay, brother. Yeah, let's get into it. Let's get into it.
that's a 6x6 package that Amazon dropped on your front step. Like, wait, what?
So look, you and we spoke about this, and let's begin with this all pertinent question, and don't be off put by, I might single in on you, and I might get off stage for a second just to let you have the stage. But my question to you is, what happened 9/11 2007, brethren?
I used to work for Lenovo. We used to be IBM personal computing division. and I had a $6.2 million call. I lived in Washington, D.C. That was my territory. Arlington, Virginia, courthouse. What's up? And I was by myself, and I was eating chicken fried rice. Day just like today, real pretty, sunny, and studying who I was going to talk to, doing my homework, and I choked on some food. And that's when everything slowed down to a trickle pace. Thought ran through my head, this is not good. And apparently blacked out. And on the process of blacking out, I had shuffled about 4 or 5 feet to my left. Apartments in DC are very small. So my office to my kitchen to throw this blockage up because the food got stuck in my throat. So lack of oxygen plus blunt trauma was a recipe for me not to have a 6-figure-a-year job anymore. I did not know that at the time, and neither did the doctors. I managed to wake up through God's graces, and it was the longest inhale I've ever experienced nor ever heard about anybody telling me about since. It took a couple of minutes to fill some of my chest with air so I could get up and realize that the food was still stuck in my throat. I had conked my head, and I got up, and everything that was on the walls, I was a bumper car going through my apartment. Everything that was on the walls was on the floor, crashed, smashed, and so did the old finger down the throat. Out came the blockage plus a whole bunch of blood. So I called my girlfriend. I mean, I'm outside sales rep. I'm Superman. I can do everything. Let me just call my girlfriend. No need for EMS. This is too embarrassing for me. I'm missing a client call right now. The rest of the team's on it. I've already hung up with them. My inside rep manager, who was located in North Carolina, a state away, said, go to the hospital. I had no idea that this was even something that needed to be worried about. It was just a concussion, right? So I'm breathing. It hurts right here in my chest where the food got stuck. And my girlfriend's coming, and the look on her face was that of Dawn of the Dead. Like, what happened? I was like, the hospital. That's all I said. And so needless to say, went to the hospital. This is the same hospital that our representatives, the senators, go when they have a sneeze or a hiccup or a baby or whatever. And it is beautifully, nicely done. It is probably one of the prettiest. It looks like a hotel, this Trauma One Center. And on 9/11/2007, I was treated and released. That doctor scared the ever-living shit out of my girlfriend because she said, watch him, talking about me, for the next 6 to 8 hours, but call us tomorrow and continue to watch him. She didn't go to sleep that night. God love her. But it was a confederacy of dunces because nobody knew what they were doing. And nobody had protocol to keep me. Today they have protocol of 3 days just to watch. So I had lack of oxygen plus blunt trauma. I couldn't talk. I had no filter. So everything was at high volume or no volume. And yeah, so that all happened. No tests were run. They did do an MRI just to make sure I didn't have a brain bleed because that's all they knew. And so I didn't have a brain bleed, and I was told to go home and this will hopefully pass over. We hope it's going to pass over. I had a lot to say about that because I'd just fallen off of a $6.2 million call. So I had a lot, and plus I had several other irons in the fire. So this was a real big inconvenience to me, and a lot of other people too. So that's what happened the day of. And after that was 2 weeks of me being on vacation. I had no work. What?
No, I'm sorry. I don't mean to stop your flow, but I do have a question just so people could keep up.
Yeah.
Can you please tell us real quick what constitutes blunt trauma? Because I believe there's even ignorance around this question. So can you tell us what constitutes blunt trauma, please?
As best I can, because I'm not a clinician, but as best I can, blunt trauma is somebody punching somebody in the head, baseball bat to the head, anything that strikes the head, and that is an inanimate object. Even two people conking their heads together count as blunt trauma. It's something that is more of a strike. But in my case, and I didn't know this until then, but inside of your head is like coral. It's very sharp. So when I shook my brain around in my skull, it was cutting it and slicing it and taking function out, one function at a time, including my eyesight, my speech, my pretty much every organ misfired in a matter of a month. So I was going to the hospital a lot, and I was paying copays a lot, and I went straight to specialists as fast as I possibly could. So that's between $200 and $500 a specialist, because I was Superman. I didn't need big time healthcare. Screw that. I'm just going to get the minimal. No, big mistake. So I was learning from professionals that some of them went to Ivy League schools. They're like, we just don't have everything we need to help you. And that was the most freeing thing at the same time as depressing at the same time. Because they're telling me, Paul, you're on your own. They're just not telling me in those words.
All right, brother. All right, brethren. So continue, telling us exactly what, how did you get to understanding where you are now, the understanding you have now?
What's next is a little bit of God, a little bit of angels, a little bit of this. Dating this woman for about 7 months until to this day, so 7 months prior. And her sister's best friend is one of the leading neurologists in Northern Virginia. And we went to the urinary doctor, the heart doctor 3 times, the speech therapist for a month and a half, all the processes that would be there on a Tuesday but not on a Friday. We went to them, and I was doing this mainly myself. Like I told you, I pretty much had to do this myself, and my girlfriend would take me to my doctor's appointments. We didn't date, so those were our dates, so to speak. And we chased everyone that was under the umbrella of insurance. I chased this one, chased that one, chased this one. She was exhausted, and I appreciate her for her hard work. But it started to dawn on me when I could not remember what happened at 9 o'clock at lunch, that I needed to get on with my life. I needed to find something to get my brain back. And that I didn't know it was going to be a lifetime thing. I thought it was just going to be a couple months because, again, it's just a concussion. It's no big deal. And so we went through all these doctors, and I would shout. And so you know this, brain pain comes out your mouth. So I'd shout and go on, and I would drink and get worse. I would eat pizza 5 times a week because I couldn't remember what I ate the night before. And boy, there was a really good pizza place up the street. So I gained 30 pounds in 2 months. Bread will do that. But she was so put off. She's a finance major, and she just wanted to get me to the point where I would not cry, yell, scream, or just be depressed. And she would encourage me to have friends over, and they would get on my nerves because they kept telling me, you look fine. But that's what they were telling me, that because that's the truth. You can't dig around the truth. You got to go through the truth to get to the other side. And the whole time I'm finding on my own ways to get my brain back. And Brain Injury Services in Northern Virginia, I networked, broken brain and all, couldn't see out of my eyes. I'd look through my eyebrows, and that was 2020. And I networked to get rehabilitation. And Ruben, my doctor, was with me, but he knew about it, but he didn't know all about it. And he didn't know if they would take me just because I would have a concussion. So I sat next to a guy with a helmet on, and I would ask him, why do you have that helmet on? He couldn't answer me. He couldn't even know what I was saying. But did that until insurance ran out, and then I'm holding on to all my practitioners. They're like, I can't date you. I'm married. I'm like, no, 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 no. You're part of the lifeline that I need. And they would suggest these different people, these different places, these different. My speech therapist connected me to a long-term rehabilitation outfit that I'd love to have generated in the state of Louisiana, which is they just take people that are mainly high functioning and not necessarily good functioning, and find them a ramp to their house. Find them. We have that, but it's all dramatics. It's all what they teach in the book is the house is burning down. You got to go in. You got to go help this person. He wants to hang himself. He wants to hang his cat, whatever. But that's the drama part. But what I'm talking about is the 80% of what about me? There's a Me Too movement, and I'm in it. Sorry, not sorry. But it's the people that get in a wreck real quick, or get into a altercation, or get into a long-term abusive relationship, and they ain't right. They're not right after that. And there's Uncle Mildred drinks a lot at Thanksgiving because she's not had many good Thanksgivings in her life. Talk about PTSD. Boom, there it is. So I'm in this quagmire. I'm in this quicksand. My job, my technology job is already gone. I mean, it's been 6 months. That just soon be 6 years. I can't catch up with that. I don't know what I had for breakfast. I did eat. I'm not hungry, but I don't remember what it was. And so then I started to look outward, and I got on Facebook. Oh dear. Well, Facebook was a blessing and a curse at the same time. It just depended on how I looked at it. And that's still today. But I needed something to bounce me out of this huge bucket that I was in amongst many, many, many other people. And they called it out as mentally ill. I'm like, hold on a minute. I'm a structure guy. I built laptops. If you drop a laptop, something is going to break, and something is going to disallow functioning of that laptop. So I would joke with people. I'm a laptop that's been dropped on the ground. Oh, that's not going to work. Correct. But it's not going to crack because our cases are steel and they're not going to crack. So it looks like a good one. But in fact, once you open it up, you've got a big old haul of horrors. You've got a whole bunch of mess coming out. And that's where I found myself. And I couldn't go to loud bars. I used to do that a lot, like daily, because I lived in a real urban area, real close together. You went to the bar and you grabbed dinner and you had a beer and you went home. But all of a sudden, my head was so sensitive. My eyes were super sensitive. They still are. I'll look down while I'm talking because this panel of light affects me. But the insights that I gained while I was in rehabilitation that a speech therapist was totally cobbling together in 2008, not kidding. And she just wanted to make us work. And it was the simplest of processes. Bounce the ball, shift it to the left. Pick up the ball, throw it in the air, shift it to the right. Boy, that took an hour just to do that. But I'm so grateful because she kept walking up to me, and the stuff that was flying out of my mouth was, "You're so insightful." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever. Is there beer here? I mean, there's a lunch service here, right?" So that's what I was used to. And finally, I let go of the jokes because a person that's had a concussion is full of jokes. That's what I've found. And I'll tell you now, I made up my mind in 2010 to find an oxygen therapy. And in 2012, I logged 40 dives in an oxygen chamber that was not approved. It was not, insurance had nothing to do with it. I found it on my own because I needed to get out of this pit of sorrow and pharmaceuticals. Oh, joy. And I wasn't getting out. There was no stairs coming out. And it changed my life. Did it fix me? In some areas, but I was at least better. I could talk clearer. I didn't get made fun of because I talked funny. In the middle of a sentence, I would did. And coincidentally, you mentioned PTSD. It comes along with concussion. It's a buy one, get one. And it just matters. It depends on if you let it out your mouth or keep it in. Most people keep it in because they're going to get judged or teased or something to that effect. But when I did the oxygen therapy, I lost my stutter. And that in and of itself made me more normal. And then I had to kind of decide, well, if you're more normal, do you stay with the diagnosis or do you cast it aside and go back to work? So I would make deals with myself. Could you stay awake from 9 a.m. till 11, constantly doing something? And in 2012, that was a really good idea, but it took me until 2015. It took me years to get to the point where I could get past the onus of, you have a brain injury, you're not right in the head. I carry that around today, and I've become callous to the people that judge me, because brain injury is not something that's going to be prevalent on a daily basis. It's going to pop its head up, kind of like whack-a-mole. Pop its head up sometimes, and sometimes it won't. Sometimes it will. Sometimes it won't. Sometimes it'll be somebody you talk to that will trigger you.
So let me take a quick pause and ask you. So exactly for the people, what is traumatic brain injury? Now I understand I asked you what constitutes a concussion, but is there a difference between concussion and traumatic brain injury? And if so, what is traumatic brain injury?
That's where the stigma starts. So I have a mild traumatic brain injury. You put an M in front of the TBI. Traumatic brain injury is as far as I understand, is an insult to the brain, either contra coup, shaken back and forth, or you can have one through taking the wrong medicine and it just running amok through your brain, damaging it. Encephalitis is another. Gosh, these are really good questions, but some of these are documented, but not all of them. And it's a mild traumatic brain injury only in the emergency room. That's the only place that exists, is mild, because mild is anything but mild. There's, like I was saying earlier, I was talking to a woman and she was shocked. She's like, I have all these symptoms, and that can come from a concussion? Yeah, it happened with me, and it happens with, the statistics are every 11 seconds. Someone has a traumatic brain injury in the United States, and that's understated. All these are understated. 6,000 per day. I think it's rounded up to 9,000 per day have a brain injury in the United States. 2.8 million have a brain injury in the United States. The clinicians, God love them, they're great at what they do, but they're still quoting the number that's 10 years old, which is 1.7. It's really 3.5 if you add strokes, because stroke is a brain injury. I know it's almost a blessing that I had it, because I know all this stuff. I didn't know all this stuff. I used to make computers, which ironically is based on the function of a brain. God has great sense of humor. But once I accepted my brain injury for what it is, I got to the point where I found this oxygen therapy, and I didn't go to doctor's offices anymore. Specifically, the woman counselor, just like you, LCSW, and ironically, her father was on the team that made the first personal computer at IBM. Those are the people I used to work for. That's what I was working with that day. Anyway, so the daughter bailed me out, and I was that guy that, once my family did an about face and said, we're not buying it, you're just trying to get out of work, I guess. And I stormed into her office, and I think that young man on the couch sold his clothes, because I had a lot to say and my lungs were full of venom. So he literally crawled back when I busted through that door. That was very rude of me. I don't expect anybody to take my word as to that's the way to do it. But when you have a concussion, you lose your filter. So my filter was gone. And I was just told by my family in so many words, we don't get it. You're making this up. Get your ass back to work. Stop uh, uh, not meandering, but pandering. My doctors were pandering to me. They were just, oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's terrible. Oh, it's terrible. No. And I would gather my crew at the rehab center, and I was like, "Can you talk to these siblings of mine?" And they had 5 of them, and they kept looking at each other like, "Why are we doing this?" And after the phone call was over with, they said, "Oh, I understand why we're doing this." They don't get it, and I'm not I don't have energy then, nor do I have it now to explain that to them, because people like certain political figures and you can't get it off of them. So don't even try.
Let me say this real quick. So, what you're saying is definitely akin to experiences that I was having prior to being diagnosed. Again, I said earlier that it's our loved ones that experience it first because those are the closest to us, and we're too close to the sun to see it. And so it was the chronic irritability, it was the sensitivity with sounds for me. It was the wanting to be away from people and isolate myself for long periods of times. Like my behavior began to change, and when you were talking again with the traumatic brain injury, I definitely should have had this name readily available, and so please excuse me if I say it wrong. Phineas Gage, I believe it was. Again, forgive me if I said it wrong. You familiar with Phineas Gage?
I am.
Yes. Well, Paul, who better to tell that about Phineas Gage than you? Please
That
take the
doesn't
stage.
mean I remember who he was, though.
Oh, well,
I know who he is. Phineas Gage. Didn't they carve a hole in his head or something?
see
What they,
something. An accident happened, and I believe a bar went straight through his
that's right.
skull.
That's right.
Yeah, he suffered a major traumatic brain injury with the bar going
And they
through his.
left it in or something like that.
Well, once they fixed him up, because he survived. So once they fixed him up, what they noticed is that this man went from being a very humble man, quiet man, very moralistic. It had great etiquette, as his friends would describe, to being very erratic, being very impulsive, being very sharp with people, being very rude, irritable constantly, being that one person that everyone can't stand to be around. They knew, but because of how dramatic the behavior changed after the head injury, they knew it was due to the injury. His friends knew it was due to the injury that this changed, because it was a radical change in behavior.
That was the same. That was the same with me, Harry. I I went from driving every day, 12, 13, 14 hours a day, to now uh, within 30 minutes after breakfast, I was fast asleep for 3 hours. I did promote the symptoms that you suggested, but that oxygen therapy, that made it go away for the most part. But let's put it this way. I felt like I was in a pool of water, and sometimes it would get hot and sometimes it wouldn't, but I was sucking air out of the top of just the water. I was underneath and I couldn't get above the water. So the oxygen therapy that I meant got me above the water so I can make better decisions with my life. I can make better decisions on what I'm eating. What I'm eating and drinking for that matter, that had everything to do with my mood. That had everything to do with my filter. I was just pouring battery acid on my filter every time I'd have a beer. Wait, I grew up in New Orleans. So did you. You grow up at 10. You've already had at least a sip of beer. So that was my thing, and uh, it, it it I was incensed that I could not do what I did before, and it was in the matter of a minute.
So yes, and so with I could talk to you for hours, man. But I do help the people understand, how your life. Like you spoke on how it changed, but I want, it's important that people who are suffering from this, that they stop shaming themselves and that they understand what is going on, and also how to get help. So can you assist people with that, brother? And please talk about the foundation.
Okay. Just a little segment before I get into it. I'd go every year. So I had my brain injury in the Washington, D.C. area. I moved back to Louisiana. But before I did that, I made sure that I had good ties with the Brain Injury Association of America, who has got it understood. If you need help, you can dial that 1-800 number with Brain Injury Association of America. You'll be connected to a certified brain injury specialist. With the work I do with them is to go to Washington, D.C. and find out what the lawmakers are up to, spending money on brain injury. Not yet, a little bit, somewhere here, somewhere there. $60 million did go to the military, and part of that money created brainline.org. Brainline, all one word, .org. And that is a PBS public broadcasting station that has sunk all kinds of money into military, civilians, and children.
Can you give me those that number? You said, what was the name of the hotline? Give me that information.
It's a Brain Injury Association of America, BIAUSA.org. And the other one is brainline.org. And brainline.org has support groups per state. So you can do some clicking, get resources and support, and you'll find the United States. You can click on Louisiana, you can click on Oregon, you can click on North Carolina, and you can find a support group in your state, near your city.
And did you say brainline.com?
Brainline.org.
And Brain Injury Association of America.org, as well as braininjury.org or brainline.org.
Brainline.org, correct. The foundation that we're trying to generate, because I can make a website, but we don't have it all. I have it in my head. I just need help sorting it out and making it into something, and that's called amazefoundation.org. We have our paperwork for the state. We just don't have it for the IRS yet. But that supports me to travel around and do talks like this, but in front of people. And I have slides. I can show you before and after pictures of brain missing, brain showing up. And the keynote is that I'm not well. I'm not completely well from my issues. Just like somebody that has multiple sclerosis, or somebody that has some disease that you can't see, but if you stress them out, or if you overwork them, or if you get them tired, this other person, quote unquote, comes out. And that's where I am today. So I could actually function for a couple of hours, helping people, doing stuff like this. But I'm going to rest after this on purpose, because my brain, the battered and bruised thing that it is, I got some of it back, but I know that my strategies will be in place to recoup.
Brother, let me do a little bit of advocacy as well, and just say that for those of y'all who suffer from PTSD, understand how closely the symptoms of PTSD and traumatic brain injury mimic each other. And so one of the things that I noticed within myself, and I learned the hard way, which I think my brethren Paul did as well, is that when I get tired, you talk about that other person, and you don't know that you've lost yourself. I call it the not self thing. It's those moments where you're not yourself, and it's usually not healthy. It's always not healthy. It's in a space of fatigue. Usually that fatigue is the main thing that gets me. But in that space of fatigue, you become unhealthy. In that state of unhealthy, you fall into your not self thing, which may be bitterness, self-loathing, just outright anger.
Or just being fed up. It's like, y'all just leave me alone. I'm overstimulated, but you look fine. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that.
And let me ask you this, because I know with PTSD, definitely the suicide rate is a correlation between PTSD and suicidology. What about TBI? I would assume that those rates are pretty much the same across the board.
It is, but we don't talk about concussion as a TBI because it's marginal. It varies on different people. But my PTSD story is as follows. At 25 treatment. Each oxygen treatment is called a dive. And I was 25 or 28 in, and that's a whole nother show. But I realized that I'd been washing my dishes by hand for the past 5 years. And on one day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I needed to, and I lived in this very high rent district in Lafayette, Louisiana, small town America. And I backed up and I looked at this thing called a dishwasher. And I said, why the hell am I not using that? And I said this to my core group of people. It was about 5 people. Those are my core group. And one of them said, you probably hit it when you were thrashing around on the floor, choking, losing your life. And I said, you get a coffee for the day because I think you just answered the question. And to this day, I still don't trust dishwashers. As asinine as that sounds, when it's involved in your accident, you get in the car after you've been T-boned by an 18-wheeler. Go ahead. No, that's not where you're going to be, and or at least not comfortably. So yeah, my PTSD comes in. But now that I'm walking my path and I've accepted my brain injury for what it is, and work with others and I help them to see this is what it is. It's very practical circumstance, and this is what it is. And if you just I would ask questions daily. What about this? What about this? What about this? It's gonna be what it's gonna be. So a little spiritual path started as well. So I became a different person, and I'll realize that if I set things up just like a stage, every day is a stage. And if I set things up and I'm 4 o'clock into it and I've been doing something all day, constantly, one after the other, by 5 o'clock, I'm not going to go out at night. I'm not going to go find something to do. So, am I reckless? No, I'm smart. I'm smart to know that if I push myself, I'll find that different person. I'll find that grumpy Gus, I used to call him.
And thank you so much, brethren, for talking about that. And for those of y'all who are suffering from PTSD, TBI, and you may not be able to self-diagnose, which nobody should self-diagnose themselves, but if you are suffering the symptoms that we talked about, chronic irritability, dizziness was one of my symptoms, as was brethren over here, Paul. A chronic irritability, moods changes, periods of where you don't want to move and want to isolate yourself, things of that nature. It could be a few things. It could be chronic depression as well as PTSD, but usually comorbid to PTSD is major depressive disorder, and I would assume the same for TBI.
It's a slippery slope, and that's where I realized, I'm like, hold on a minute. If I'm experiencing this with concussions, and I could easily slide down that slide to get into the bowels of hell, and in the last 14, active 12, in the last 12 years, I've met people that have died, that have taken their own life because they want to stop. They want to stop the ridicule. They want to stop the pain. They want to stop the confusion. They want to stop everything. And my hat's off to them. Is that something that I missed? No, I just happen to have been on the way to acknowledge that they are real in their circumstance. And that's exactly what this is. It's a circumstance. I was handed a diagnosis and said, good luck. And I've had it. So I want to share that with other people. That's why I'm here. That's why I do what I do. That's why I'm very outspoken on things on methodologies and strategies. Like I have a bucket strategy. I'll share that with you another time because we're running out of time. But if I have my buckets and they're not right, I'm going to pay.
And so you know, I see it, my diagnosis as a blessing as well as a responsibility, because I give gratitude in all things, but the diagnosis and the pain that came afterwards from me thinking I could operate the exact same way, it helped me to develop or be more intentional about developing the skill of living authentically. And you mentioned one main thing that you said it multiple times, and I don't want people to miss, or rather I choose for people to catch. I would rather people catch the jewel that you dropped, in that it all began with acceptance. He kept saying, once he accepted what was going on, he said that multiple times. And I hope those of y'all who listen to this, y'all catch that. Acceptance is the key.
Oh,
Can you talk a little bit about that, brother?
if I didn't, I'm going to wag my finger at my doctor, just like I did when I went back to work and I looked like I had a stroke on 16 people that were trying to fill me in on what I'd missed while I had my brain injury. That client call did exist. So when I came back, they all set up, and I hung up on them because I could not. They said, "How much is the opportunity?" I was like, and I reared back and I called the doctor, and I had a lot of loud words to share with them. And fact is, bruh, it was not pretty. And she said, I told you that that your circumstances have changed. I said, since when? I didn't remember. I didn't remember anything like that. She probably told me, and as I was walking out the door, I'm like, okay, whatever. And so then I was like, okay, now I'm going to write stuff down. So I wrote stuff down for years just to prime the pump to get my memory back, to get my working memory back.
Come on. Let me bring that in real quick too. Again, another symptom is the forgetfulness. Because let me tell you something, brethren. And I have, I'm much better at living skillfully, and so I maintain for the most part equanimity. But yeah, that what you were talking about, that symptom right there, it's very prevalent, and it can cause great issues.
It's what we called at IBM is the word called tipping point. And I found all these tipping points that could have sent me down into the bowels of a hurricane. And it could be in seconds. And I'm like, how do I slow that? Because medical science would stop or go. You're either going to stop or go. I'll leave it at that, not to get graphic. But I was in the middle. I needed to function again. I needed to and pharmaceuticals weren't getting it at all. I would function for 2 or 3 weeks, and my brain would go, oh, let me just rearrange all that stuff. Let me rearrange. Oh, now it doesn't work. And it was over and over and over again. My doctor was so blessed. He had something that came off the assembly line. He said, you can only take one of these a week, one of these pills a week to focus and for sleep. I was like, take this back. I do not know what happened yesterday, and I can't tell you if I asked you. What did call out my traumatic brain injury, my concussion, my mild traumatic brain injury that's not mild, is a 6-hour test with a neuropsychologist. It's a gold standard. It's a necessary thing. I don't want to talk anybody out of it, but if you go get one, it's a concussion protocol, I guess. I don't know what the name of it is, but it's 6 hours, and you get a 30-minute lunch. Have somebody drive you. Because that called out my concussion, besides going to a specialist like I did 8 years later in Baton Rouge. And he had a concussion test that involved movement because he's a chiropractor. And turned out I couldn't even finish it. And afterwards, I was just talking out of the side of my head. I went with a nurse friend of mine, and she was stunned. She was like, I've never seen anything like this. I'm like, well, it's a concussion. You passed it for 5 minutes during another conversation that was a bigger conversation, but the concussion conversation is rising big time. It's rising. We've got NFL, we've got military, we've got moms, we've soccer kids, and
what's that movie? What's that movie with Will Smith? He played the doctor regarding NFL. I forget.
Concussion.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, concussion. Y'all.
Harry just made it funny. It's called concussion. And there's another one called the crash reel, REEL, crash reel. And it steps through a family going through a traumatic brain injury. He actually cracked his skull. They can't tell me. I don't think I cracked my skull. I just shook it up like a cocktail shaker. And I said that for years, making fun of it, because if I owned it, now I'm going to have to, you know what you ought to do is, you know what you're doing wrong is, you need this diet. And I'm like, okay, this is another reason why I need to own it so that I can just say, yes, I had a concussion. It changed my life. It brought me to a more spiritual path. It brought me to save other people?
Ooh,
Really?
okay.
How do you do that?
Okay. All right. All right. This is the final question, and this is a great one. Great timing for this because the theme, I combine the treatment modalities that I'm familiar with, effective treatment modalities with spirituality because these spiritual truths, there's only so far that science can go. Science is always catching up to spirituality. And for me, the physical is a manifestation of spiritual laws. And so where science ends, that's where you can continue to rely on spirituality to get you to that place. And we do have, I personally believe that we have all the mechanisms inside of our body to heal ourselves. And so my final question for my brother is connect your personal brand mission to being lit or living in truth for life. My new course is being released, the Lit Factor. For those of y'all who haven't seen my website, it's www.becomingoutlier.com. The Lit Factor is the first phase of this my way of teaching my personal mission statement, which is to assist those in developing the audacity to live unapologetically authentic. So, brother, when it comes down to living in your truth, connect your mission, your brand to living in truth for life for us.
It's how we connect is living in our truth. It's how we connected from the very start over a year ago. Face it, who hasn't had a brain injury? Who hasn't had a concussion? And I've learned that years later, that concussion can manifest itself as an anxiety disorder. Where'd that come from? And all of a sudden, you've got another disorder, and all of a sudden, you've wrecked 3 cars in 1 year. How'd that happen? Where'd that come from? And the onus is on me. It's not on a man or a woman with a white lab coat that's going to write a prescription. It's not. I'm sorry to break this to you, spoiler alert, but we got to do what we got to do to get on with our lives. And not all of it is through a pill. There's a song out there that my friend teased me about. A lot of teasing in the early years was there's a pill for everything. And I realized that, yeah, what can I do for me? My mom and dad grew up in the Depression, so they kept instilled in me, what can you do for Paul today? What can you do that would impact others positively? I love community. I could care less about it before my brain injury.
But it sounds like you're speaking of, brethren, real quick, is you are doing what you value most, which you're doing what's most important to you, you say. And so what's the most important to is something that we value. And so you're living through your values. And for those of y'all who have not heard me conceptualize authenticity, authenticity is about living through your values, how closely in alignment you are with your values. The more in alignment you are with your values or what is important to you via intentionality, you intentionally doing what it is that you love to do, that lights you up, that lights that flame in you, that keeps you passionate for life, that keeps life alive for you. When you do that, now you're behaving, now you're operating in an authentic space. And when you are in an authentic space, it is amazing what you can do. Paul, my brethren, I can tell personally that my brethren, he has reached so many people's hearts after having this diagnosis. You hear me? After the pain, after the loss of friendship, the loss of different mobilities, the loss of basically how life was for him. He lost it all. And by loss, we don't really lose anything, right? We don't take losses, we take lessons. He had to change. And when we have to have such a dramatic change, especially when it comes down to having a condition and having to change your life, it offsets, it triggers this grief process that we have to go through. And awareness is key through it all, which is why my brother emphasized first, he had to accept what was going on, and I just had to speak that real quick. But brethren, I'm gonna have to pull you back on here, man. But I want to give you a chance to talk to the people real quick, and then I'm gonna jump back on here and say my little piece. All right.
All right. Thanks again for having me, Harry. The love between us is honest because we get each other. If somebody's watching this, is somebody watching me, somebody's watching Harry, and at some point in their lives have had a traumatic event. Could have been a wreck, it could have been falling down a flight of stairs, could have been some idiot hitting you in the head with a Bible or something, just random. And you weren't the same after And it might not be the next day, it might be a couple of months later, and I assure you, the answer that you just gave me is nope, I'm good. Dwell on it for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, and let that trickle up that you fell down the monkey bars and clocked your head into a steel bar at the age of 9. Maybe that's the case. I can't tell you how many times people, when I say, have you ever conked your head? Nope, nope, not me. But know that you're not alone. You're not alone with this. And there is ways and methodologies that you can adopt, even if it's for yourself, because every brain's different. That's what I bring to the table. Every brain's different. Your brain's different than mine. You like coconut. I can't stand it. But know that you're not alone, and there are resources out there. There are people that will be able to help. And unfortunately, not all of them are going to be covered under insurance. So, and we also serve a monthly meeting called the Amaze Brain Health Group. We're on Facebook, and we meet once a month, and we talk about. Harry has come to a couple of our sessions, and we talk about what is possible. What is possible after you've conked your head? Like I said a minute ago, who hasn't fallen and conked their head in some way, shape, or form? Sometimes that forms this. In my case, that was the case. In Harry's case, he's mentioning that. But know that you're not alone, because it's not. And the other thing is, it's not all in your head. That's a half truth. It's not a whole truth. Yes, it's in your head. You have some synapses that have broken. I didn't know what that word was when I was making computers back in 2005. What the hell is a synapse? I think I heard that in chemistry class or biology class in 6th grade. But it once you go back to basics and watch what you eat, watch what you drink, watch how you sleep, watch when you sleep, and be patient with yourself while you walk through this, know that you're not alone. You've got a couple of resources on here. You're welcome to have me back. We're talking about the brain. We're talking about the biggest thing on the face of this earth, in my opinion, besides your heart. Thank you very much for having me.
Brethren, thank you so much for being on here, man. And of course, we're going to pull you on here, man. I love Paul. He is a great spirited man. And while I feel for the journey that he's been through, I'm so grateful that he's been through it, because he would not be who he is today had it not been for back then. So,
Amen.
brethren, you are welcome again, man. And let me say goodbye to my people real quick, man. And I'm going to get up with you real quick. All right.
All right.
All right. Y'all heard it. Another great episode of the Is That So show. Again, Is That So is about equanimity, y'all. It's about understanding that life will bombard you with many stresses. You may be bombarded with many stresses, but you can still choose your relationship with the present moment. You can still choose your relationship with these many stresses. Paul Bosworth is an example of someone who chose a different route with his stresses. He went the natural route, which was the grieving. It's natural. The grieving, the going to alcohol, the irritation, the wanting to isolate yourself. And many of us have suffered from the thoughts of suicidal ideation. And I don't mind saying that at all, because it's a common thing that more people need to speak about. We need to remove the shame and the negative connotation around this thing and understand that this is a common condition. This is a common experience whenever people feel so overwhelmed by life that they don't have a way. And what happens whenever your medical provider or the medical community or any community that you're relying on to give you this valuable information to help you figure out what's going on with you, what happens when they are unable to? What happens when people dismiss your symptoms, when they minimize what you're going through as if they can feel for you? So these I put together this season 2, to be the season on mind body medicine, to be holistic. And so I'm going to bring up topics like traumatic brain injury, PTSD. I'm going to bring on providers that talk about holistic ways of healing. Remember, there's so many different dimensions to wellness. Financial wellness is the number one we typically look at as Americans, but understand you have emotional wellness, you have social wellness, you have intellectual wellness, you have career wellness. Where you're working at, does it affirm your reality? Does it affirm who you are as a person? Do you feel lit up for life, or are you living in your truth by doing that? Last thing I want to say is that when you live in your truth, what you do, it's not work. When you get lit and you begin to live according to your values, and you find a career path that's in alignment with your values, it no longer becomes work. It becomes a duty, a privilege, an honor. And I want to say that as a psychotherapist to my people out there who are actually my clients, because none of y'all listen to me are my clients. If you have not been my client, thank you, because it's a privilege and an honor to be your therapist. To those listening to us, thank you, because it's a privilege and honor to share this information, because this is every bit about us as it is about you. You know, we are better together, we are stronger together, but we got to understand how to come together, and understanding is the key. Understanding and accepting that this thing is here. All right. I I have to go ahead on and pull the plug on this thing, but it's been a great time. My brother Paul Bosworth, he shared a lot of great information with us. Plenty stakes to go around, and we're going to have him back on to talk a little bit more about spirituality and how spirituality assisted him in healing, the healing process of his TBI. Because understand this, that in life, it's never a quick solution. It's always a process, and the process is much more important than the destination. All right, y'all. This is the Nocturnal Therapist. I appreciate y'all. Agape and stay lit.